OK. Bienvenue tout le monde à la rencontre spéciale du le 15 mai 2023. Welcome everybody to the special meeting of the 15th of May 2023. I think we can go to the session opening, please.
Yes. Qu'il soit résolu que la présente assemblée soit ouverte, proposée par conseiller Forgue et appuyée par conseiller Lalande.
Tous d'accord? OK, c'est approuvé.
Oui.
Y a-t-il des additions à l'agenda?
Non,
Des
monsieur le
changements?
maire, non.
OK. Donc, on s'en va à l'adoption de l'agenda.
Qu'il soit résolu que l'ordre du jour soit accepté, incluant les modifications apportées séance tenante le cas échéant, proposé par conseiller Boisvenu et conseillère Drolet.
Maintenant, est-ce qu'on a des conflits d'intérêts? No conflicts. OK. Aucun. OK, je pense qu'on s'en va maintenant à Madame. On va y aller, je pense, c'est 8, hein, c'est ça?
Oui.
All right, Caroline. Welcome, guys. Okay. That's fine.
So we had done our facility condition assessment back in 2021, and we were to do more detailed look at some of two other buildings, the Illinois Community Center and the Santa Barbara Community Center. So we hired a new engineer last year, and this is Réunion from the Extraordinaire, from Réunion Engineering, and they're going to present to us their results, what they found, and give us some more information so we can start to make some informed decisions about where we need to go with these buildings. So I'm going to turn it over to Eric and Sasha.
Okay. Well, yeah, thank you for the introduction, Caroline. My name's Eric with EVB Engineering. I was the, principal investigator on our staff doing the condition assessment of these buildings. A little bit of background about the RFP the nation put out. They asked for us to complete an intrusive investigation to determine the building condition of the building structure of these two community centers, and to recommend any repairs to make the building structure, improved over the service life. We were also we're supposed to complete a review of the building code classification for fire separations and fire ratings, and we also completed a designated substances survey to assess for any designated materials or materials on the designated substances list within the building. So I'll start with our results of the Caledonia Community Center. It was built in 1977, roughly 50 years ago, 45 years ago. And overall, we found that the building is actually in pretty fair condition. The
Going that way.
Oh, sorry.
I'll do it for you.
Okay, thanks.
Just stop, let me know when you want another slide.
Go ahead. So the building, you can see from our floor plan here, has conventional concrete foundation walls with concrete footings below. The ground floor structure is made up of wood floor joists with a plywood flooring and then a hardwood flooring on top of that. The above grade walls are just 2x6 wood framed walls, and there's pre-engineered trusses that span the width of the building. If you see on the ground floor plan, there's 3 steel beams that run the length of the building below the main hall of the community center. Those are just to reduce the floor span of the ground floor joists and provide support sort of at intermediate levels across the main hall. I'm mentioning this because they are supported by a series of steel jack posts that sit on concrete piers in the crawl space below the ground floor. And we noticed that because there is pretty significant groundwater issues in the spring at this building, that the bases of those jack posts are quite heavily corroded, and we will be recommending them for replacement in the near term. You can go to the next slide, please. The load-bearing walls in this ground floor are the north and south exterior walls, and then there's a 2x6 bearing wall just at the base of the bathroom. We did not notice really any significant issues with the low-bearing walls or the roof trusses themselves above the main portion of the community center. You can see at the west end of the building, there is a small storage closet. That was an addition area that was installed that houses the main electrical room and just a storage closet for amenities within the community center. That portion of the room we found to have issues with water entry through the roof and through the foundations. And the condition of the wood floor structures, walls, and roof in that area are in pretty poor condition due to past water damage and just wood rot in the floor and walls of just that storage room area. We really didn't find any issues at all with the large door hall and the small hall at the front. So we aren't recommending any immediate investigations or repairs to these areas at this time. One thing to note, throughout the ground floor, there is a combination drywall and plaster finish on all of the walls around the main hall. We did find that those contain asbestos materials, so any future work that would disturb the existing drywall and plaster coating in the main hall area would require an abatement by a specialized asbestos contractor to remove that hazardous material. You can go to the next hall. I'm not sure how well you can see with the lights, but this is in the crawl space below the main hall. You can see there's a series of steel beams supporting the wood floor, and the bases of these jack posts look like they've been sitting in water. We're expecting seasonally, in speaking with Carol Ann and some of the custodians at the building, there is a fair bit of water in the basement crawl space in the spring. And you can see the bases of those jack posts that sit on a concrete pier are constantly wet, and there's quite significant section loss. So we're actually recommending that these get replaced within the next year time frame, just because the main hall has a lot of use for, we saw elders playing sports, and then any kind of functions where there's gathering. This is immediately below that area, so we're recommending replacement of these posts. In the short term, if you could go to the next slide, please. Here's the electrical closet area I was talking about. This small room, you can see from the exterior photo, was completed as part of an addition. Whenever the roof structure was connected to the existing building, we saw signs of, you can see the water staining of the trusses in the attic right above the electrical panel. We didn't notice any active leaking while we were doing our inspections this spring, but we are going to recommend that the municipality spend some resources just ensuring that the weatherproofing, specifically around the electrical utilities, is, I guess, improved and certainly weather tight to prevent any water damage in that electrical room. You could go to the next slide, please. And then in the basement, there's several crawl space windows. I think we have 4 of them around the outside of the foundation, where the window panes and screens are completely missing. First time I went to the building and went in the crawl space, you could see there's snow sort of piled up along the edge of the parking lot where some of these crawl space windows are, and because the basement is experiencing seasonal dampness issues, we think that replacing these crawl space windows with a weather tight new window would be a worthwhile expense to help improve conditions due to the excess moisture that's in the basement. You can go to the next slide, please. So then the last issue, or one of our results, was concerning the fire separations within the building. Again, the RFP mentioned that we look at the building size and building classification for its compliance with floor ratings fire ratings of the floor assemblies. We found that as an assembly type occupancy, a building of this size, in order to be compliant with the building code as of today's building code classification, it would need to have 45-minute fire ratings for the ground floor assemblies, any of the roof assemblies, and their load-bearing components. So the floor assembly that you can see from this crawl space would need to have a 45-minute fire separation if it were constructed in today's building code. Same with the ground floor walls and the roof structure. In speaking with the chief building official and just from our experience on previous projects, there are some avenues in Part 11 of the building code that allow existing structures to remain as they are. But if there was ever to be a major renovation or a change of use of this building, you would be required to upgrade the floor structures, the roof structure, and the load-bearing components of those structures to a 45-minute resistance rating. Included in the report are all the recommendations that we're proposing as part of the scope of our study. The ones highlighted in red are the ones discussed today, as they just sort of focus around the short-term needs of the building. You'll see whenever I go to our total construction estimate we included in the report, there are quite a few items that we've included in that may not necessarily need to be proceeded with in a short-term construction project. We just kind of wanted to highlight today some of the immediate repair, some of the immediate repairs that we think should be, planning should start for the nation municipality. Overall, the condition of the building is actually in reasonably good condition. The floor structure has, other than the corrosion of those basement jack posts, we didn't really see any systemic issues with the building. There's some local places where there's been wood rot due to some water and weatherproofing issues, but really minor repairs to the low-bearing walls, the ground floor structure, and the roof. So we think that with some resources spent on some short-term structural fixes, that this could be a viable building moving forward for the municipality. You can go to the next slide. So yeah, you can see our entire Class 3 construction estimate for all the repair items we're recommending, or that we've included, that we noted during our review. You can see there's installation of 45-minute fire rating assemblies for the ground floor and roof. You'll see a lot of type 3 asbestos abatement for linoleum flooring and drywall stucco. These are only repairs or costs that would need to be incurred if there was a change of use or a major renovation of the building, which I don't think the municipality is planning on incurring at this time. So in speaking with Carol Ann, whenever we prepare our final report, we can adjust some of these items that are included in our estimate to reflect the scope of work that the nation would be looking to complete. Is there anything else you wanted to add regarding this building, Greg?
Yeah, the only item on the jack posts, the only other item would be on those jack posts in the basement. We would, as you see, they're down low. We would also build up the pier, the concrete pier below
yes.
each jack post, just to try to elevate it. That was one item. And as well, Carol Ann, in our discussions with Carol Ann, apparently the water issue has has worsened in the last 5 years. There's some type of blockage or something that's impeding the water from getting away. It's become worse, so we would also are recommending some more investigation to try to determine if it's a blockage or it's just not properly outletting at the ditch. So to try to get the water out of that crawl space as well.
So is there tile in the crawl space that there's no weeping tile down there?
I'm questioning that the roof drains are coming down off the eaves trough, and it's going into the ground, and if there's something blocked drainage-wise around the building, because the eaves trough come down and go into the ground.
Okay, into like a weeping tile around the building, on the outside of the building
Yes, and that's what I'm
type thing.
questioning, if something there has not blocked in that process, and if there's a way to investigate that.
Okay.
Because that building didn't used to have water in the basement at all when I went there like 20 years ago. But there's gradually became more water coming into it.
I see nothing as far as foundation stuff. Is that because you couldn't investigate it? It's buried and you don't like...
We reviewed pretty extensively the visible parts of the foundation from the interior within the crawl space and along the exterior. There's 6 inches of the wall sticking above grade.
Right.
And other than these drainage issues that Caroline has discussed are quite recent, there's no issue with the condition of the concrete foundations. We saw no signs of settlement or frost heave. Sure, they're wet, but really, as long as we were able to preserve the integrity of the wood floor structure and those steel jack posts that are, near the water issues in the basement, the concrete foundations themselves are in good condition.
Yeah, often if there is an issue with the foundation, we'd see cracking maybe in the finishes or maybe some type of indication, and right now we didn't, like you say, we didn't do any excavation or remove finishes on the interior basement to look at the wall, but as far as we could tell in our visual inspection, there was no issues with the foundation.
Any other questions for this building here, or did they vote?
Like, a storage area roof was leaking. Was it wet in the attic when you were there, or just showed signs of water?
Previous water damage for sure. The whole space just feels damp. As soon as you go out of that west wall of the main hall, you can kind of just feel it's not ventilated very well. But to go in the attic and say I could see a roof leak, I didn't actually see, puddles of moisture anywhere. It just feels wet.
Okay.
So Caroline had mentioned some previous repairs had been done on that roof. They seem to be working, but there is for sure signs of wood rot and water damage in the floor, walls, and that attic space above that storage closet.
Okay.
Yeah, those photos of the electrical there, that scares the hell out of me, I'll be honest with you.
Well, there's some similar stuff at St. Albert. You'll see there's just some water in and around the foundations right close to the electrical room. It's a little,
Right, a little unnerving.
yeah, a little bit.
Okay, I guess we'll move on to the next building.
Yeah. So yeah, the scope of our investigation at St. Albert was similar. This building is a little bit older. It was built in 1972. There is a history of an addition done in the 80s. What year was it you put that lift in for accessibility?
2004.
So yeah, there's been some accessibility improvements, and then renovation of the interior fixtures, mostly within the basement, for the library and that store. So this building, you can go to the next slide. We did find some more issues than at Caledonia. The foundations for this building are concrete, like block masonry, not poured in place concrete. The floor structure is wood floor joists that bear on either steel beam lines or low-bearing masonry in the basement. There are some steel beams and posts that support the floor above the library area. But yeah, mostly low-bearing masonry foundations in the basement with a wood floor. You can go to the next slide, please. The low-bearing elements up on the second floor are the north and south 2x6 wood-framed walls. You'll see there's a built-up beam line sort of at the edge of the raised floor sections in sort of the main hall. They're supported by wood timber columns at certain intervals. And then there's roof trusses that bear on those built-up beam lines and the exterior walls. These are slightly different than the Caledonia roof trusses in the sense that they're not pre-manufactured by a supplier. They're like basically built on site with wood gusset or plywood gusset plates. The geometries, well, they're not pre-engineered. I don't know what else to actually call them, in that they're just wood stick frame trusses. You can go to the next slide. Most of the issues we've found at St. Albert were either with the masonry walls below the ground floor or with the roof structure up in the attic. You can see by that one photo on the right some daylight coming through the foundation wall that leads right to outside. That's in the main electrical room below the kitchen. There's a variety of other cracks and places where we can see daylight right through the foundation walls. They're mostly centered around penetrations like those white plumbing pipes that come out of the wall. Generally, we found that any electrical or mechanical elements that penetrated through the wall were not sealed very well. They simply cored a hole out of the masonry, passed the pipe through, and left it. So I think the majority of the issues with the foundations where you see cracks like we exposed in the building here are below points where there has been water getting in the foundation, potentially freezing and thawing, and deteriorating the condition of the masonry, either at mechanical penetrations or near windows, changes in geometry, things like that. You can go to the next slide. The biggest issue I think we've found was the condition of the trusses in the roof. I'm not sure how well you can see from that image on the right, but there's quite a lot of deflection or like bending of the roof, mostly on the west-facing pitch of the roof. It's somewhat hard to tell from that image on the left, but the roof truss members, they're spaced every 2 feet, running in the east-west direction of the building. You can see if you look down them, they're all supposed to be on 2-foot centers, vertically spaced throughout the length of the building. It looks as though over time these have all started to tip, or we call them racking, of the roof trusses, specifically on the west-facing span. So some of those members, when we put a level up against the vertical chord of that roof truss, should be at 90 degrees or perfectly vertical, and we've found them tipping as much as 10 degrees where we had an 80-degree angle on a truss that's supposed to be vertical. Also, something to note is that there are no diagonal braces or horizontally spanning members that brace any of the longer elements in that roof truss system. So there's really overall just a lack of horizontal stability or rigidity because the trusses have such a long span. They're quite high. Typically in a newer build or more modern construction, we'd see a lot of diagonal members to brace those trusses, which we didn't see here. Next slide. Another high priority issue we noticed in the building was at the addition area. This is over top of the addition on the west side of the building where that small new accessibility elevator was placed. You can see a newer style roof truss that's been placed just right on the existing roof. The old shingles and everything are there. When I was on site in February, there was quite a bit of snow in the attic space, which we don't ever see. It's getting in the attic somewhere, and we would recommend a roofing contractor review the condition of the weatherproofing around the addition area, specifically at that attic space, because there was quite a bit of moisture and snow in the attic during our inspection. And then finally, similar to Caledonia, because of the size and the fact that combustible construction materials are used, if this building were to be constructed today or to be compliant with today's building code, the floor structures, the roof structures, and their load-bearing supporting elements would all be required to have a 45-minute resistance rating. So again, similar to at Caledonia, if there's no change of use or major renovations prepared for this building, the building is considered to, or permitted to remain as it is, but a major renovation or a change of use would trigger the need to install a 45-minute fire resistance rating. It would be basically as simple as 2 layers of Type X drywall on the underside of the ground floor structures and the roof, and then those timber columns up on the ground floor and those built-up beams that support the roof would also be required to have the rating. Now, at Caledonia, there's just the single floor. There's no occupiable basement. The space is very open. There's lots of doors and rooms for exiting. I know in speaking with some of your staff, there wasn't any renovations or change of use plan for that structure. For this building here at St. Albert, you have occupied space in the basement. There's quite a network of rooms. There's really only 3 exits out of the basement. I would think that the township or the municipality should look into fire rating the ground floor as a minimum, just due to I guess the size of the basement, the fact that it's constantly occupied, and that there's only 3 exits. I do think that it would be worthwhile looking into adding the fire rating to this building's ground floor. So again, I mostly just kind of discussed our higher priority renovations as part of this. If you have any questions about some of the other repairs that we're recommending as longer term fixes in the report, feel free to ask. But at St. Albert, the condition of the foundations and the roof structures are the most concerning issues. And then you would also be advised to have a discussion with your staff and your building official just regarding those fire ratings, because yeah, it is quite a complex basement structure, and I think it would be worthwhile looking at adding that fire rating to that floor. Yeah. Thanks. So there's longer term repairs, more I guess architectural repairs, in the sense that we'd recommend adding insulation to the basement walls. It's pretty sporadic on where and when it is installed. The door and window sills are weathered and would need replacement, beyond the 3 to 5 year period. Improving the weather barrier and insulation on the interior of the foundation. Weatherproofing and adding a drainage board on the exterior, on the outside of the foundation, would be advised to, I guess, increase the longevity of that masonry foundation. But the big issues we see here is with the roof structure. the lack of diagonal bracing in that roof, the signs it's showing of deflection and deterioration over the years, was a concern for us, and we would highly recommend reviewing that with a roof truss manufacturer or specialist to complete an analysis on that roof condition prior to this winter. As for the designated substances, again, the perimeter of the ground floor had asbestos-containing stucco and drywall, and there was some ceiling tiles that were found to have asbestos, but not as much asbestos-containing material here as at Caledonia. But again, those would only need to be abated if you were planning a renovation to disturb them. Did you have anything else to add? Anything I missed?
No, I think that's right, yeah, just, as Eric says, the roof truss is something that needs to be dealt with immediately, at least before the next snowfall, to have a good look at that and determine if it can be, repaired in place, or if a full roof replacement is needed. That's our recommendation for that.
Avez-vous des questions? Any questions? Well, I mean, it's pretty heavy news for us in the sense that I'm looking at the numbers, and it's a substantial cost. Like I said, it's a lot of cash.
Of the $3,500 per jack post, how much of that would be building up the concrete?
The material costs for these repairs are not highly significant. The issue that somebody will have is that the underside of those steel beams is about 2 feet under the floor, or above the dirt floor, sorry. And there's only the one access below the janitor's room to move materials around in that environment and to install any type of temporary shoring to complete that work in such a small space. It'll just be labor and level of effort because it is such a small area. Material-wise, those jack posts and concrete repairs, you're looking at less than $500 in material cost per, but it'd be pretty significant labor effort
So-
to complete that.
Yeah, so like $3,500 per post, but how much of that percentage would be the material, but also the completion, the fabrication of elevating the concrete? Because if we can reduce the water and keep the water out, we should be okay, because if for 30 years of the 50 years that this building's been there, there's been no water in the basement, and we can get that sorted out, we should be able to use the existing concrete piers that were
Right.
there, right? So any, like a rough guess on how much percentage of the 3,500? Would we talking half? If it's mostly labor, it would be a high percentage, I suppose, of that 3,500.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would think to just raise those columns, the concrete piers, you'd be looking at, say, $1,500 of the $3,500 just to place all new piers.
Okay.
To
And-
remove the old jack posts, set new steel posts in would be the.
And would
remainder.
each post need to be cribbed as it was replaced, or was it okay to hold while it's replaced?
You'd probably have to shore, I don't know where the joints are in the beams, if there's one over every jack post, or if it's continuous over there would definitely be some shoring that would need to be done in there. And as Eric said, it's just the access to the space, it's possibly considered a confined space too, I guess your health and safety people may have more, so if it's a confined space, it just makes things more expensive to work in there. But those costs, I mean, that's, it's hard to have an example of costing on that, so we're just estimating time.
Sure.
We put time to, you might find it, you could go to 3 different contractors, and one guy might say 35,000 up to 100 and some thousand, you
Okay.
get quite a range in prices, and, again, it's something that I think needs to be done sooner than later.
Okay, thank you.
D'autres questions? Commentaires? Well, I think that's it, guys. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
And I'm sure we'll be in touch if other questions come up there. We'll go through Caroline, and we'll, like I said, there's an awful lot to chew on there for us, because that's a lot of money for us. It worries me, quite honestly.
So, just to, I guess, go over this last budget summary, we did feel there were some costs included in our estimate that the township or the municipality would not, or sort of be interested in avoiding. And we've kind of tried to take some of those startling costs in that budget estimate out of it after speaking with municipal staff here, and sort of just demonstrate that we think with some sort of immediate smaller term or smaller scale repairs, these buildings could be viable for 3 to 5 years, or some length of time in that range, while the township does, or the municipality does plan for either larger scale projects or construction of a new community center, which we've tried to capture here. Because, yeah, we've explained that there are some immediate short-term repairs we think should be completed, which, yeah, should be reflected here. But as far as the long-term costs in our estimate, we would have to have further discussions with you on how to proceed with those.
Okay. Well, thanks again, guys.
And just one other, on the, I guess the Caledonia one we see as in general, a building with some repairs or some maintenance and some continued maintenance. It could be a building that you get more longevity out of, whereas the St. Albert one, I'm not sure if it would be worth doing the close to $1 million in deficiencies that we've identified, or if it'd be better to put that towards a future new community center, or at least planning for that. Because you gotta remember, our costs do not include mechanical and electrical as well, so there's likely some costs, considerable costs in there.
Yeah, like I said, we got a lot on our plate as far as
Yeah.
also measuring the usage, all like that. It's a very complex issue. It's not just like, this is one piece of the pie, and we got to look at the whole thing, because, like I said, there's a lot going on there. But this is definitely going to give us food for thought going forward. I mean, now we know kind of what we need to do.
Yeah.
I think that it's important to know that those are what is minimum requirements in order to keep the centers functioning.
Right.
Right.
Okay. That's
For
okay.
our safety of our clients are those repairs that are listed there.
Okay. Mr. Bailey.
Just want to reiterate the trust issue with St. Albert. Would like to be addressed prior to the
Prior to the winter is because right, because once there becomes heavy.
just be another single little
Right.
Right.
Okay. Right.
Just, I don't know if.
Okay, yeah, just to, our building inspector said that the trust issue in St. Albert's needs to be looked at before wintertime, because with the snowfall coming, we're not sure we're going to make it through the winter. That's essentially what he's stating.
And that is very identified, we have liability issues. that we need to-
Yeah, once you know it, you can't unknow it. That's the thing that we need to look at. Okay. Well, thanks again, guys. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Bon. On a maintenant. Est-ce qu'on s'en va à huis clos?
Je voulais juste, là, il y avait juste une petite recommandation là, pour une résolution là, pour ce qu'on vient de voir.
OK.
là. C'est juste qu'il soit résolu que le Conseil reçoive le rapport RE 07-2023 tel que présenté à sa réunion du 15 mai 2023 par la directrice des loisirs. Proposé par conseiller Stewart et appuyé par conseiller Fogg.
Tous d'accord? OK, c'est adopté.
Puis là, Mme Scott, vous allez nous revenir avec un plan de match.
Quand est-ce que vous voulez avoir le plan de match? Est-ce que...
Moi, je laisse ça à votre discrétion. Là.
OK.
Ouais, je pense que, écoute, là, avec l'idée là, qu'il faut prendre des actions avant l'hiver, là, faut commencer à regarder ça avant trop longtemps parce que les contracteurs vont commencer.
On avait mis des argents, Monsieur le maire, en réserve pour qui était relié au master plan.
Oui,
Donc, on a déjà des argents là, pour prendre des actions.
OK. Parfait. OK.
Ah, Monsieur le maire, si ça vous dérangerait pas, j'aimerais qu'on parle du point 14.1 pendant que Caroline est ici.
Sûrement.
Oui, donc Caroline, est-ce que tu voulais expliquer un peu?
Mhm.
Puis le comité de municipalité va aller au travail, le vendredi et le samedi. C'était demande d'avoir un permis de boisson, a special occasion permit, and that will start, we will run it, so we will do that.
Oui, je pense qu'on a fait ça dans le passé, comme ça.
Yeah, toujours fait ça.
Donc, c'est pas rien de trop nouveau, là, fait que...
Depuis le début de
OK. Bon, ben, est-ce qu'on a quelque chose
Oui.
d'attaché à ça?
Qu'il soit résolu que le Conseil de la municipalité de la Nation endosse et appuie Limoges Community Day Committee pour la demande auprès de la province pour un permis d'occasion spécial pour l'événement qui aura lieu les 23 et 24 juin 2023 dans le village de Limoges, ceci étant une activité municipale significative. Proposé par conseillère Drolet et appuyé par conseiller Boisvenu.
Merci.
Tous d'accord? OK, donc. Donc, c'est approuvé. Super. Bon, je pense qu'on peut
Oui.
fermer l'Assemblée. On s'en va à huis clos.
Oui, donc je vais juste lire la résolution pour aller en huis clos. Qu'il soit, excusez-moi, Monsieur le maire, qu'il soit résolu que la présente Assemblée soit ajournée à 17h11 pour une session à huis clos conformément aux sections suivantes de la loi municipale 2001. Section 239.2, des renseignements privés concernant une personne qui peut être identifiée, y compris des employés de la municipalité ou du conseil local, des relations de travail, les litiges actuels ou éventuels, y compris les questions dont les tribunaux administratifs sont saisis, ayant une incidence sur la municipalité ou le conseil local, les conseils qui sont protégés par le secret professionnel de l'avocat et, dernièrement, les négociations avec une corporation. Donc, proposé par
Oui.
conseiller Lalande et approuvé par M. Forgue.
Tous d'accord? OK.
OK, alors je vais mettre les caméras en huis clos. On est large.
OK, welcome back, everyone.
Je vais juste réouvrir l'Assemblée. Qu'il soit résolu que la présente Assemblée soit réouverte à
On est 18h17.
18h17. Donc, proposé par conseiller Mainville et appuyé par conseiller Fogg. Donc, on a discuté un huis clos d'une négociation avec une corporation. Monsieur le maire a apporté une mise à jour et informé le conseil à propos d'une négociation. Ensuite de ça, le point 5.2.1, donc à la réunion du 8 mai, il y a eu une offre de service qui a été présentée pour la considération du conseil et c'était pour la gérance du service des incendies. Donc, aujourd'hui, on a une résolution et je vais la lire. Qu'il soit résolu que le conseil accepte la proposition pour une offre de service de la part de la cité de Clarence-Rockland pour la gestion du département des incendies et qu'une entente soit ramenée à une réunion ultérieure pour l'approbation du conseil. OK? Donc, proposé par conseiller Mainville et appuyé par conseiller Lalande.
Tous d'accord? OK.
Donc, ensuite de ça, j'ai reçu des directives pour le point 5.2.2. Donc, je n'ai pas besoin de résolution, Monsieur le maire. J'ai
OK.
reçu ma directive, donc
OK.
c'est bon.
Tout est beau?
Oui.
Bon, maintenant, on va passer, je pense, on peut y aller à confirming by law, c'est ça?
Oui. Donc, qu'il soit résolu que le règlement numéro 78-2023 pour confirmer les procédures du Conseil à ses réunions extraordinaires du 15 mai 2023 soit lu et adopté en première, deuxième et troisième lecture. Donc, proposé par
Monsieur Fogg.
M. Fogg et appuyé par Mme Drolet.
Tous d'accord? OK, donc. L'ajournement est à 18h19.
OK. Donc, 18h19. Donc, proposé par conseillère Drolet et appuyé par
Monsieur Boisvenu.
OK, M. Boisvenu. Donc, 5 OK, c'est bien, monsieur.
OK. Bon, ben merci tout le monde. Notre prochaine rencontre, c'est le 29, si je me rappelle bien.
Exact, exactement.
OK. See you folks on the 29th. Thank you.